The bloodiest conflict in human history was kick-started on September 1, 1939, when over 1.5 million German soldiers crossed into Poland, in an operation codenamed Case White. This not only ignited the most brutal conflict humanity had ever witnessed, but it also marked the beginning of a terrifying new form of fast mechanized warfare, popularly known as the Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. However, German officers hardly employed the term Blitzkrieg, which was popularized by the British media. In fact, the Wehrmacht did not view its approach as embracing a fresh style of warfare. Instead, it saw itself as conducting a traditional war of maneuver, though with innovative methods. During World War I, the introduction of newly developed tanks played a crucial role in overcoming the defensive gridlock created by artillery and machine guns. After the war, countries like Russia, America, and Germany delved into innovative strategies for using armored vehicles. Yet, even as visionary officers like Charles de Gaulle and George Patton pondered the game-changing possibilities of tanks, the traditional leadership in France, the UK, and the US hesitated to believe that these still improving machines could truly revolutionize the nature of warfare. In fact, the majority of tanks were vulnerable to less expensive anti-tank weaponry. The ones equipped with thicker armor often suffered from sluggishness and unreliability. As a result, armored vehicles were largely viewed as supplements to existing infantry and cavalry formations. This analysis, however, proved to be short-sighted. During the 19th century, German military thinkers stressed the importance of concentrating forces to gain a local advantage at a specific Schwerpunkt, or main target. Once the enemy's defenses were breached, troops would surge through the gap, disrupting communication lines for nearby enemy units and encircling those unable to escape. Mechanization didn't entirely alter this strategy, rather, it significantly amplified its effectiveness. Armored vehicles, given their ability to rapidly amass and move, outpaced infantry or cavalry. They could swiftly overrun or bypass smaller obstructive forces, once the stronger, yet relatively immobile anti-tank defenses at the front line had been overcome. Heinz Guderian, a forerunner in the field of military strategy, pushed the Wehrmacht to concentrate its tanks into 3 panzer divisions in 1935, with organic artillery, engineers and infantry allocated to support the tanks, rather than the other way around. In contrast, the French, British, and Polish armies had some tank brigades or divisions, but the majority of their tanks were still scattered in small units attached to slower-moving infantry divisions. By 1939, Germany had heavily invested in what had become the world's most formidable air force, the Luftwaffe. This aerial might significantly amplified the effectiveness of mechanized forces. The ability to quickly amass air power at critical fronts and high-priority objectives, like artillery and tank gatherings, was a substantial advantage. Furthermore, the Luftwaffe could even function as a sort of flying artillery for armored units that had surged beyond their supported towed artillery. Moreover, aircraft had the capacity to disturb and decelerate the progress of enemy formations, situated behind the front lines, impeding the swiftness of their reactions. This rapid pace of operations incapacitated enemy command and control, while also depriving frontline units of essential fuel and ammunition. As a result, the enemy remained in a constant state of disarray. The subsequent demoralization, panic, and disorder frequently led even theoretically capable units to disintegrate. However, the majority of historians acknowledge that the disruptive outcomes of Blitzkrieg were not intentionally orchestrated. Instead, they emerged as a natural result of the Wehrmacht's organization and military setup. Yet, the extent of the Wehrmacht's mechanization is often overstated. During the Second World War, a significant portion of the German military still depended on horse-drawn vehicles. In 1939, the Wehrmacht infantry possessed merely 230 half-track armored personnel carriers, and even units equipped with trucks were regarded as elite. Out of the approximately 2,500 German tanks engaged in the campaign across 6 panzer divisions and 5 light divisions, around 2,100 were comprised of small Panzer I tanks, equipped solely with machine guns, along with Panzer II tanks armed with 20mm cannons. The thin armor, ranging from 5 to 15mm, on these tanks made them vulnerable to penetration by artillery and anti-tank rifles. This implied that merely 17% consisted of Panzer III and IV tanks, as well as Czech Panzer 35T and 38T tanks, armed with more potent guns, and equipped with modest 15 to 30mm of armor. In comparison to their French, Soviet, and British counterparts at that time, the most notable and consistent technological advantage of early war German panzers was their comprehensive radio communication system that spanned the entire fleet. In the realm of aviation, the Luftwaffe held a significantly superior technological edge, with its Messerschmitt Bf 109E fighter, boasting a top speed of 354 miles per hour. In contrast, Poland's PZL P-11 fighters struggled to reach a speed of 240 miles per hour. After all, the odds were heavily skewed in Germany's favor against Poland. Germany enjoyed a significant advantage not only in terms of its larger population and industrial capabilities, but also due to its strategic positioning with troops surrounding Poland, from the south, west, and northeast. Additionally, Poland's geography consisted of relatively open plains, lacking substantial natural barriers that could effectively hinder a German offensive. Adding to this, Poland's primary allies, France and the UK, had no direct land route to provide assistance to the country. Adding further insult to the already overwhelming injury, the Soviet Union made a swift and opportunistic move to invade eastern Poland on September 17. The Polish forces made a critical error by dispersing their divisions along the border in a forward defensive stance, instead of consolidating them in a concentrated manner within their heartland. This strategic choice facilitated the penetration of their lines by panzer units, effectively disrupting supply and communication routes. The widely dispersed Polish infantry lacked the necessary mobility to free themselves, and even the units that managed to avoid encirclement and destruction suffered significant casualties during retreat. The early phase of the air campaign wasn't as one-sided as Berlin later portrayed it to be. The Luftwaffe focused on targeting Polish air bases, but the Polish aviation units had already dispersed to hidden bases before the conflict started. The Polish Air Force achieved a relatively better air-to-air kill ratio against faster Luftwaffe planes, and even managed to temporarily impede the progress of panzer columns on several occasions. However, their effective resistance lasted only about a week, before their bases were either captured, or located and subjected to devastating bombing raids. Germany's triumph in the battle with Poland was the result of a convergence of multiple factors. Yet, the accomplishment of mechanized units played a pivotal role in shaping the maneuver-focused strategy that the Wehrmacht adopted in the Battle of France 8 months later. This campaign was characterized by a strategic combination. First, the initial German attack in May enticed elite Allied forces to come to the aid of Belgium and Holland, and then a second offensive swiftly moved through the seemingly impenetrable Ardennes forest to reach the Channel ports, effectively isolating these forces from the rest of France. Once again, air power assumed a pivotal role by providing crucial support to the panzer units that had surged ahead of their artillery. The unsettling and demoralizing impact of the German advance resulted in a rapid deterioration of the Allies' will to continue fighting. Subsequently, mechanized campaigns in the Blitzkrieg style were often employed by all parties in the war, leading to significant events like the devastating initial German invasion of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Bagration Offensive of 1944, that obliterated 28 German divisions, and the U.S. breakout from Normandy in Operation Cobra. On the other hand, the armies that weathered the initial impact of the Blitzkrieg adapted their tactics to counter this fast and mechanized approach. Infantry and artillery units were trained to continue in resistance, even if they found themselves bypassed by armored forces on their flanks. This strategy curtailed the advancement of enemy armor until counter-attacking units, often led by tanks, could intervene and provide support. A notable instance of this is the determined American defense of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. An additional defensive technique, known as defense in depth, involves thwarting armored units from capitalizing on breakthroughs by entangling them in fortified positions situated behind the front lines. A prime example of this occurred in the monumental 1943 Battle of Kursk, where close to 3,000 panzers confronted 6 successive layers of fortifications, minefields, and anti-tank barriers defended by the Red Army. In an exhausting span of 11 days, the panzers managed to advance approximately 20 miles before becoming immobilized by the 3rd defensive layer. Although Blitzkrieg serves as a convenient term to capture the transformation in mechanized warfare, it's important to avoid misunderstanding it as indicating a carefully crafted doctrinal master plan, or attributing the victories solely to superior German technology. Rather than emerging from a predetermined plan, the Blitzkrieg evolved naturally through the interplay of novel technologies, the specific structure of the German military, and the weaknesses of unready adversaries. As the effects of Blitzkrieg became evident, both Nazi Germany and the Allied forces aimed to deliberately emulate its principles. However, both sides also devised tactics and technology to limit its efficacy as the war progressed. One of the most disconcerting takeaways from Blitzkrieg is that the disruptive impacts of novel technologies on established warfare norms tend to emerge naturally and unexpectedly during conflicts, rather than being fully anticipated and comprehended in advance.